Check it. The burner I laid down for the homie Spoons was smooth. I got to play around with the bevel effect and refresh my memory. I hope y'all enjoy the process and breakdown of this Blackbook session. I kicked off the sketch using a Scarlet Lake Prisma marker. It had a red value. The sketch was wild though. I felt like going off with the whips. And this name had letters that I could add some circular motion into and naturally be able to implement some whips through and out of the letters, while still keeping the original structure at the same time. I actually knocked out this sketch while standing up, bumping some music, getting into that flow state, you know? I incorporated some arrows here and there. These actually don't come into play later on in the burner though. It's alright to experiment with details while you're sketching. I'd say it's important because you get a glimpse into what your letters could be and look like if you add certain details like cracks, deep cuts, drips, anything like that, or anything you naturally come up with and like. That right there was a sketch though. I decided to go with the bevel effect for the fill-in. Since I was working on the 5 different ways you can fill in your graffiti letters video throughout this time, I felt like it was a good way to freshen up my memory with the techniques of this fill-in method. Using the same Prisma marker I used for the sketch, I started to fill in the right angles along with the top angles of each specific letter, splitting the letters into 2 separate angles so that another color can come in and fill in the left and downward angles to bring in that bevel effect. Doing this helped me get a glimpse of what angle should be filled in this specific color before the next color comes into play. Once I had those angles filled in, I moved on to the left and downward angles of the letters. I filled in these angles crimson red using another Prisma marker. You can barely see the difference in value with this color. Still, I rolled with it. I wanted to use similar colors just in case I messed up on certain angles. You can tell that the left and downward angles are darker than the right and upward angles though. I was glad I went with this fill-in method. It really freshened up my memory and made me more comfortable with using different colors for the next time I bring this method into play. Using a Molotov paint marker, I did a simple outline around the letter structures. I used the 1.5mm nib just to get the roundness of the whips really sharp and precise. While doing all that, I implemented my 3D going towards an invisible vantage point at the bottom center of the page. There's so many ways to add 3D, that shit is crazy. I then added lines from certain angles on the outside of my letters and had them going towards that vantage point. I cut them at around ½ an inch long, then closed up the width of the 3D by flowing with the rhythm of the letter onto the next line that was heading towards the vantage point, and repeated this until the 3D of each letter formed. If you notice, most of the 3D landed underneath the letters. Using a black Molotov 4mm round nib, I retraced the physique and structures of the letters, now including the 3D. The 4mm nib made the outline of the structure more bold. I then started filling in the inside of the 3D with an orange Sharpie, and once everything was filled in, I left it at that. I moved on to my background and added some burgundy spikes flowing behind the letters using a Sharpie. I kicked them off like a sketch to get a feeling of where I wanted to have them placed, what directions I wanted them going, and how much width behind the letters I wanted to add in certain areas to take up negative space before I filled everything in. Once I got those steps completed, I started filling in the width of the spikes burgundy. Whatever was mapped out with the sketch got filled in, as well as the air pockets in between the letters that aren't a part of the 3D or outline. Some areas of the letters didn't even get touched by the spikes or their width. Doing this helps this background detail stand out, if I were to leave it like this, of course. I do like to add multiple backgrounds when working on a burner though. It helps fill up more of the page. Let me know what you guys thought about the burgundy coming into play. I'm not too sure if I was rocking with this color. Using the black Molotov 1.5mm nib, I went back into my 3D and left these rectangular details inside. All I did to bring this detail into effect was take the black Molotov and fill in the areas of the orange fill-in that needed to get covered in order to leave the orange rectangular details inside of the 3D. It sounds confusing, I'm not even gonna front. I used that technique while still following the vantage point my 3D was going towards. That way the orange rectangular details followed the flow of the 3D. This step is a bit therapeutic for me, so I went around and did that throughout all the letters inside of their 3D. Once that was complete, I moved on to the highlights. At first, I wasn't sure where I was going to add the highlights onto my letters. After a bit of thinking though, I remembered that the homie Ill Enough gifted me a canvas when we first met at an event. And shout out to him, cause on that canvas one of his boys used the bevel effect on a straight letter. So needing to learn real quick, I soaked up some game. Shout out to Hoove as well for helping me out on this burner during a time in need. The homie Ill Enough has a channel where he drops music though, I'll link that in the bio. I saw that Hoove had his highlights coming into play at the center of his letters, following their flow to an extent. So that's what I implemented onto my letters, and I can't front, it worked a lot. I was rocking with how it made the letters stand out more. I moved on to my outer outline and decided to use a gray Molotov. So I went around the structures of the letters, right along the flow of the outline, as well as the 3D since it's part of the structure. Since I didn't want the air pockets in between the letters burgundy, I filled them in gray instead. Using the same Molotov, I implemented some bubbles. I'm not sure why I chose to overlap the spikes with the bubbles. In retrospect, I think the backgrounds would have looked fly if the bubbles didn't overlap, but instead they intertwined with the spikes. I think that would have looked fresh. I'll keep this in mind for next time though. The bubbles came out fresh though, and they took up a good amount of space on the page. In order to fill up more space on the page, I added some little burgundy bricks scattered around the letters and their structure, filling in that white empty space in the back. I even added a couple splats from a distance and some quick zigzags using blue. Using the white Molotov 1.5mm nib, I added some shines throughout the letters to make them glisten. What I just broke down are minor details, but they have so much value to offer your burners, pieces, even straight letters. Keep that in mind, you'll develop your own method throughout time. Last but not least, I laid down some tags using the black Molotov 1.5mm nib. I threw up the boy Spoonzer, myself, the channel, the clique. I even threw up some of the boys that are gonna get featured on the channel. And also the homie Lobo, a fellow YouTuber that has mad knowledge for you guys as well. I'll link his channel in the bio. That was the finished product for the boy Spoons. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I wanted to say that I appreciate all of y'all showing love to the channel. I do these Blackbook sessions with the intent of bringing you guys insight when working on your own letters, whether you're a beginner or already have mad skills. Developing your skills is an endless game in the graph culture. To all of y'all that commented your names to get featured on the channel as well, they're coming. Y'all just wait. These Blackbook sessions aren't going anywhere. So until next time, keep writing. Peace.